And the more he grew, the more we spoke. And by the time I looked into his eyes for the very first time, it was just the biggest love bomb that ever went off in my life and ever has. If I could give advice to any mother of a young teen, it's just let them have passions and hobbies that don't involve a screen.
Yeah.
Because it's been the saving of him. When I grew up, a single parent was something that was whispered about. There was no badge of honor, and that pisses me off. We're doing the job of two people. We're freaking warriors.
Hello and welcome to a brand new episode of Happy Mum, Happy Baby, the podcast. Today's guest she's a journalist. She was the youngest editor, I didn't know this, the youngest editor ever of Smash Hits at only 21. She's a presenter, a broadcaster. She's trained to be a counsellor. She's the host of White Wine Question Time. She's a mother of one. It's Kate Thornton.
Thank you so much. That's so kind of you. It's so lovely that you mentioned Smash Hits just then. I had Stuart Lee on the podcast yesterday. The Times call him our greatest living stand-up, right? And he's wonderful. But he was dating one of the writers on Smash Hits at the time, and they were like the sexy comedy duo of the day, Lee and Herring. And yeah, we were just riffing about like coming into the Smash Hits offices, him reviewing the singles, and then what we'd do is we'd all get sent the same CDs on the team, but you don't need all those CDs, so we'd sell them to this guy in Soho called Uncle Disgusting to create a beer fund, and then we'll go to the pub and get drunk.
I mean, this is amazing. This is where you want to work. Good times.
Exactly.
I love this. Kate, you have done so much.
I know, I'm tired.
But it's really interesting because I think most people would know you as a presenter, but they don't know all this other side of your career. And not only did you have this other side of your career, you've been so successful in so many different things.
Oh, thanks. Well, not always, but I've given it a bloomin' good go. I like the idea of, now they call them multi-hyphenates or having a portfolio career. I just called it being freelance and curious. I was happy to try whatever opportunity was put in front of me. And also I think I'm really media curious. So as much as I'm hopeless with technology, I'm really interested in new platforms. And so, when the internet became a thing, I was that woman that bought Wired magazine, to understand it better. Because I love, as much as I don't like the mechanics of tech, I love the possibilities of it. The fact that we're doing this blows my mind, because back in the day, I would have been, I would have had to leave the house 2 hours ago to get into town to meet you.
Yeah.
And that was, I think I've lived through the digital revolution. Like, when I edited Smash Hits, I didn't have an email. The internet was not used in the office. We had a fax machine. I had a mobile phone that had an aerial and a hand, like a carry strap.
Okay.
That's how old I am. That was 1996, kids. You couldn't send text messages. And I had a pager.
Wow. I mean, but it's really interesting. I think, did you feel like the multi-hyphen thing is very much a thing now, and I think people realise
it's just got a name now. You used to say I'm really stressed, and now it's like I've got anxiety. We're just better at understanding how to label things.
But do you feel like people would accept you in those different roles, or
No.
did you? Right. Okay. So that's what I mean. People accept now. It's a multi-hyphen thing. You can do this. You can do that. You have skills that you can adapt and bring over to different things.
Yeah.
Whereas in your career, did you feel like people were like, no, you're this. You can't do that because you're this.
But I think you always need somebody to push those doors open. The trick is to keep them open and leave them open for people to come in behind you. So, for me, as lovely as it was to be the youngest ever editor at Smash Hits, the more important thing for me was I was the first woman.
Really?
And that was 1996. That's shameful. Predominantly the readers of Smash Hits magazine were female.
Yeah.
So the fact that it took that long for a girl to get the seat is pretty shocking to me. But the hope was wrapped in the fact that I was appointed by three guys that were amazing and wanted to change things. So yeah, we always have allies around us. But yeah, I mean, it sounds really easy when you put somebody's life, and I do this on my podcast, and and you've been on many a time, and I've praised your life and made it sound oh, so breezy and so lovely. And oh, fancy.
It's the highlights, Kate. It's the highlights.
Yeah, here's your best bits, right? But we should never underestimate the struggle and the pushback.
Yeah.
And there's been plenty along the way for me. And that, as I sit here at 51 now, that's probably the stuff I'm most proud of. Is I never heard no. And if somebody said no, I was like, why? I was that person. And, you get branded along the way as being gobby or, lots of words get attributed to women that push back like that. Well, certainly did then. I really hope not so much now.
Yeah.
But along the way, there was a lot of pushback. But do you know what? By that point, I'd already accrued this sort of brilliant squad of women who were just like me and were doing the same thing in their own genres, like, the Spice Girls, right? So there's safety in numbers. We were like the Blazing Squad in bras before the Blazing Squad was even a thing. There was just too many of us to deny. And we were all pushing doors open and going, come with me, like that wannabe video where they all follow each other around. That was the 90s female phenomena for me. And those women are still my friends now. And I'm so freaking proud of us. Because now you get to this point and just surviving this long, suddenly you go from sort of like, oh, what happened to them? And slightly has-beeny to, oh, you're a legend, you're still here. We're getting into our legend phase now. It's just holding on, babe. These fingernails have been gripping for years.
I love it. I've got to say, I love photos of you all together when you're hanging out and you're doing stuff, because I just love the fact that you're all still so close.
Yeah. We really are. And our kids have all, we've all watched our kids grow up together. You have these madly insane moments where, like, you all, like, I'll never forget going back to see it. The last time the Spice Girls toured and they played Wembley, that was a minute. That was a moment, because I was, I've been there full circle for that. They were the girls that stormed my office at Smash Hits, pulled me out of a meeting and demanded coverage. And I couldn't deny them. I couldn't deny them. You're the first cover of Smash Hits. Emma Bunton's wearing my bra because hers didn't cover her nipples. If that's not sisterhood, I don't know what is. And then her mum laundered it, wrapped it in tissue paper and had it sent back to the office for me. It's just lovely. And now we're all going through, different life stages together. We all sit around and we talk about perimenopause and menopause, and you just go, God, we have been there for so many of life's milestones. And I say this and I really mean it, they are amongst my greatest love stories, my friendships.
I love that. And do you know what? I think growing up, one of the biggest things is that you're so focused on your love being, or on a romantic love. I think so many of us growing up, whether that's whatever that, but it's all about finding that person, that one person that you can marry and start a family with. And I think it all looked, very sort of Disney picture perfect. And I think even Disney now are changing that narrative in terms of what it is that we aspire to, what love means in a wider way.
They're old-fashioned yarns written and drawn, in the case of Disney, in an era where women couldn't get a mortgage, couldn't have a career, couldn't order. You forget, in 1982, the law changed so that you could order a drink without a man at your side in a bar in the UK. That's in my living memory. So why are we fantasizing about achieving what female success looked like almost, 70 years ago, when the world and we have changed so much? I don't want to be a Disney princess. I'd much rather be a Marvel character, thanks.
And you are. Kate, what was your childhood like? Where did you grow up?
Cheltenham in Gloucestershire.
Very nice. Do you have siblings?
I have one brother. He's called Jim, or James, but everyone calls him Jim. He's a firefighter, as is his eldest daughter. Super proud of them both. Everybody still lives in Cheltenham apart from me and a couple of cousins that have moved away. But fundamentally, we're a big family, very working class family. My dad worked for the majority of my life nights in a factory, and my mum worked days, so that there was always somebody home for me and my brother.
Right.
And And when you say we're from Cheltenham in Gloucestershire, everyone goes, oh, nice. It's like, yeah, we cleaned for the nice houses. Like, do you know what I mean? In every sort of, swanky part of the UK, there's an upstairs and a downstairs. We were definitely downstairs, of which I am, by the way, infinitely proud.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I've got, my aunt works at Cheltenham Ladies College, and she's worked her way up. She's a housemaster, like a house mistress, and she looks after a lot of the kids that come in from overseas. But yeah, that's as close as I ever got to that level of education.
So, but you had a really, a big family unit, not just you four, but sort of the wider family around as well.
Yes, they're like my grandparents on a Saturday. So my nan, I used to see my nan, my dad's mum, every day, because I'd leave my bike at her house. So me and my brother would cycle to her house, and then our cousins lived literally at the end of the garden in an adjoining council house. And they would come up and we would get the bus to school together. So my nan would stand there and she'd wear this tabard every day. I can still smell her. And there was always mince in the pocket. And then she'd give us 20p each to get an ice cream at lunchtime. Because you could literally get change out of 20p for an ice cream back then. And then we'd all shuffle off to the bus stop together, get the bus to school, where all my cousins went. All my cousins were pretty much at the same school as me, because that's just how it was, And then at the weekend, we'd all go there on a Saturday, and everybody would smoke. Not the kids, obviously, but there's like there was loads of there was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, probably about 15 adults crammed into a 2 up, 2 down. Right, no windows open, smoking endless cigarettes. We were given.
So funny. I have this vision as a kid. I have this memory of there just being like a layer of smoke and us all underneath it. I don't know whether that's just something I've dreamt, but that's such a clear image.
Exactly. But it was ever. And then when the pool straws came on, it would be like, shut up. You're not allowed to speak, kids, because we might all get rich. And we'd be getting this box of broken biscuits because there were so many of us. It was the cheapest way to feed us. And we'd all fight over this box of broken biscuits while everybody smoked. And then you'd say, can we open the door? It's a bit smoky in here. I go, are you kidding me? Bloody heating bills. So we'd all just be locked in to this kind of terribly toxic, smoky environment. But do you know what? It was such a happy childhood in so many respects. It was just, the sense of family, the sense of love, the sense of support. Even when I had a tough time at school, I always, when I started, I had a experience of bullying at school, as so many people do. And so, my auntie Wendy my mum's sister lived near the school. So rather than leave me, nobody dealt with bullying in the way they do now. So rather than leave me exposed for being beaten up in the playground, she'd say, bring your sandwiches to my house. And my auntie Wendy, God love her, stayed home every day for 2 years to sit and chat to me at lunchtime until I found my friends. And that's massive, isn't it? That's a big thing and I really appreciate that now at this stage of my life.
So I know prior to career you weren't thinking kids, but then when you were in it and living it, and perhaps people around you, like your amazing female friends, were starting to have kids, is that when you started thinking about the potential of having a family?
Yeah. Suddenly, I think as I hit my 30s, it started to be like, oh yeah, you become alive to the idea of it, because it's, you can see it around you. I'd also, like you say, I had these amazing girlfriends that were doing it and just bossing it, right?
Yeah.
They were tired. They didn't always feel like they were winning, but they were doing it. It was possible, right? And also, I think there was this huge sense of empowerment within our group that we were change makers, right? We genuinely believed that. And I still do, to be honest with you. I still think you need people like us to come along and really believe sometimes. And I think we were all meant to meet one another so that there was that kind of like safety in numbers, the Blazing Squad in bras. If you don't know who the Blazing Squad are, this will mean nothing to you. I apologise for my age-old references.
I like it.
In my family, on my mum's side, there is a history of early menopause. So my mum had early menopause. My grandmother conceived in perimenopause. So that was something I was very alive to. So I went and had my ovaries checked. And I was told when I was 34, you should probably crack on. So actually, I was in a secure relationship. We were engaged to be married. It just, when the doctor said, if I were you, I'd put my foot to the floor, suddenly the idea of not being a mother was so like, no, I can't imagine a world where that's not a possibility for me. So we started trying to have Ben, and within 6 months I'd conceived. I was very lucky.
Do you
Very
remember
lucky.
the day that you found out you were pregnant?
Yeah, never forget it. Never forget it. I know.
Did you
exactly
have
where I stood.
symptoms?
Nope. And then I was sick as a dog all the way through. I literally had a brief reprieve in my second trimester, but it wasn't the easiest of pregnancies, and he was premature. He was making a bid to escape from 28 weeks.
Really?
So I was kind of in and out of hospital. So yeah, he's all, ironically now the irony now is that he's never anywhere on time. Much
It's
like
definitely
me.
never early.
But literally was, knocking from 28 weeks.
So let's go back to the start, because you said you can remember exactly where you were standing when you found
In
out
my
you were pregnant.
bathroom, I knew that I was late with my period, so I did a test, and there it was, that blue line, the blue line that changes everything. And from that moment, I have been 100% deeply in love with my son, as I'm sure every mother will attest. That
yeah.
if you're lucky enough to have that feeling, I know that that's not everybody's experience, but that was certainly mine. And the
Yeah.
more he grew, the more we spoke. And by the time I looked into his eyes for the very first time, it was just the biggest love bomb that ever went off in my life and ever has.
I love this so much. So you say he made early release.
Yeah.
But leading up to that, how was your pregnancy? Did you
Shocking.
know that? Oh, really?
It was real bad. I mean, at 6 months pregnant, you wouldn't have known I was pregnant unless I really pulled my tummy back, because I'd been so sick, I'd lost so much weight. And then he came early. I was in for 12 days, I had what were, I thought, Braxton Hicks, but
Yeah.
equally could have read as contractions. So by the time he was delivered, I was pretty knackered. And then he was poorly. He had severe reflux, and that took a while to diagnose. We were in and out of hospital. So it just wasn't the easiest of starts. There was the thought that he would have to have an operation, and then he didn't. So, I mean, I was prepared, but so ill prepared that I remember my friend Shiara, who I'm sure you know, calling her going, he's here and I haven't got a car seat. And she had to drive across town with a car seat. And then, good luck to us trying to work out how you do an ISO bloody fix thing when you've just given birth and you can barely stand up. But we did.
So I guess because you gave birth so early, you must have been, I think so many people, especially if you've got a busy pregnancy or there's so much going on, you're just kind of like, oh, I won't. Or if you're a little bit superstitious, you put off doing certain things, don't you?
Because
you just
I think
kind
I'd had so many medical issues across the course of the pregnancy, I just didn't want to tempt fate. And they were doing such a good job at keeping him in. I would literally go in and sit in King's College Hospital on a monitor, and, they would pump me with steroids and just to keep him in, because we needed his lungs to be strong enough for him to be able to function outside of ICU on his own. That's what it was all about. That was what it was all about. And he was the tiniest little thing. And now I look at him and he's 6 foot G, he's 16. And I just think, how did you fit in the palm of my hand? Oh. But even just before I came in to do this record with you today, he's off school at the moment. I went and sat and chatted to him. He was in bed. And I just look at him and I still can't believe that he fills a double bed, because you'll never lose that sense of how tiny and fragile they once were, and how dependent they were on you, and how independent he is now, which is absolutely right. And I'm so proud of how independent he is. But God, when I used to do the X Factor with Sharon Osbourne, we'd sit and talk for hours about everything. And she always used to say, really misty-eyed, if I would give everything I've got to go back and have just one day with my kids being young again, I would blow their armbands up, I would change their nappies, I would wipe their nose, I would cuddle them, I would read them every bedtime story. I wouldn't care about getting up in the night. And I really get that now.
Yeah.
I really get that now. That's the sort of stuff that you lie awake and think about at night, you know, when you can't sleep. So for all the mums and dads in the grips of those exhausting days of early childhood, drink it in.
It's almost like, would you want to go back knowing all the things that you know now? You know, because I think when you're in the cusp of it or when you're in it and everything is just so overwhelming and new and, you know, you feel overwhelmed by stuff, it's actually really difficult when you're in it to have people going, enjoy it, because it goes.
Yeah.
You're like, but I am so depleted, you know, but
So
then
tired.
all of a sudden
it
is gone. You know,
It
you're
is
not.
gone. It's so he's 16 now, Ben. He's just finished his GCSEs, and you know, it dawned on me the other day. I was raking leaves in the garden, and suddenly, and it's quite often when you're doing those kind of mindless, mundane chores that, you know, you start to unravel what's really going on in your head, right? Mm. And I literally remember just putting the rake down and stood there and going, I don't have any more school runs. Like, he doesn't need me to, I mean, he will always need me to drop off and pick up until he's got a driving license and a car of his own, I guess. But it was just suddenly this milestone moment. And I was like, it's another one gone, you know. It really hit me hard. And I think having raised him on my own as well, I phoned a girlfriend, another single mum, and she's like 2 years ahead of me. And I phoned her and I was like, you know, and we've always shared these moments. We did lots of holidays together with the kids when they were younger. So it's funny, isn't it? You find your co-parents in different shapes and guises. For me, it's been my mates. And shared that, but it just felt massive. It felt massive. And yet it feels a minute ago that I was in a hot sweat trying to fit that car seat.
Yes. You know, and, you know, Ben's only 6 years older than my eldest. And I'm a bit like, it makes you go, God, it's going to come so quickly.
So quick, G, honestly. And, you know, at the moment we're wrestling over, he's like, stop taking photos of me. I was like, never. Why are you taking photos of me? I was like, because my memory's shot in perimenopause as it is. I need photographic evidence. I want to see how your face has changed. You know, I've got these pictures on the fridge of him across the years, and you can just see the growth is exponential. And his face this year to last year when we were on holiday, it's the only time I'm allowed to photograph him, high days and holidays, G, is massive, you know. So you don't want to, you know, in the words of Aerosmith, I don't want to miss a thing. I really don't.
Well, and you've spoken before about the grief that comes with your child growing up. You know, it's that thing of, you know, that every day, every new milestone is you're getting further and further away from them totally relying on you and being your little baby.
Totally. And it's mixed with huge pride, by the way, right? You know, and it's you know, it's absolutely right and just that your children pull away from you and stretch their legs and their opinions and everything as they grow into being their own person. And it's extraordinary. Like, Ben now has a girlfriend who he's been with for over a year now, and they are so good together. And watching him be a boyfriend, that was a big concern for me because I'm a single parent, right? So has he had that role modelling of, you know, what it is to be a great partner in life? And it turns out, yeah, he has actually. You know what? He's great. They're really good with each other. They should be very proud of the way that they look out for each other, love each other, respect one another. You know, they just did prom. That was a big moment. You know, all this stuff is, for every new step they take away from you, it's a step away from you. You know, it is a step away. It's progress for them, but you have to let go. And it's really weird because when you're the mother of a newborn or a toddler or a child that is so dependent on you, you can't imagine ever being okay with that. But you are. You actually are. It's really weird. Life prepares you for it. And I don't know how, because I would have thought if he was 6, I would have been going like, what do you mean I'll be all right with this? Like, but I'm all right with it.
Also, though, Kate, I wonder, because you have done this alone, and it has been you two against the world, you know, you two doing everything together. Often when a teenager flies the nest and they go to uni or they do whatever they're going to do, you know, if there are two parents, you are together again. You know, it's you two. Whereas you have built everything together, you and Ben, and then when he goes, it's you. So is there a case of actually in that finding out who you are again in terms of, because you do lose yourself in parenthood, especially if you're doing everything on your own, especially if everything falls on you to pick up.
Yeah. And I'm quite excited about what this next chapter of me looks like.
Yeah.
I'm determined to be excited about it. He's not going anywhere. You know, we live in London. He'll probably be living with me until he's 85 or I die, whichever comes first. It's about, you know, change for both of us. And actually what's really weird is I'd always turn down work that would have taken me out of the home on a regular basis, so that meant I wouldn't be here for him, right? Yeah. So across the years, you know, I've literally had, you know, agents with heads in hands going, "You're saying no," and I'm like, "I'm saying no because I want to take him to school. I want to pick him up from school." You know, that feeling of that hot hand in yours, right, walking to school. Oh my God, that is one of the most delicious memories that live in my head. And it's so sensory, it's so visceral. I will never forget that. The how was your day? The turning up with snacks, you know? The excitement of you walking into a playground and them actually not like side-eyeing you going, "Don't talk to me." That, like all of that stuff, right? I'm so glad that I had all of that. And it's not everybody's, you know, listen, I don't judge anybody that puts work before that. I was very, very fortunate that I'd got myself to a position financially where I could afford to turn work down.
Yeah.
But then, this is where life just steps in sometimes. The day he finished his last exam, I got a job offer in that's going to take up a lot of my time. And I'm ready for it. And I won't be at home every day. And that's great. So do you know what? Sometimes you just got to, at the risk of sounding like Noel Bloody Edmonds, you just got to put it out there and hope that something comes back. And it has for me. And so actually my life is about to be challenging in a different way. And I'm ready for it, really ready for it. And he's about to go off and be challenged in his own way. And the timing could not have been more right. I didn't plan it. It's just happened like that. And I'm going with it.
Yeah. What are your biggest fears and worries sort of going forward for Ben? Because obviously now, especially with social media, with boys, with incels, all that stuff that's going on. You know, I was talking to a journalist last year and she was like, her biggest fear for her children is what goes on online. So for you, like, how have you spoken about it? How have you managed to, I don't know, it's so hard. I think so many of us just worry that our kids are going to get sucked into this world.
I think you're absolutely right to where I think about is the age at which they're exposed to it is massive. And I'm so thrilled that there is a huge discussion around banning smartphones for kids under 16. Ben has a phone, and he had a phone from secondary school onwards because he travels by public transport. He takes 3 modes of public transport to and from school, so he needs one. You know, I can only speak from my own experience. He's a pretty smart kid. And I've not had to police him. I mean, I did. When he first had a phone, I had this thing called Custodio, this app, so I could see what he'd looked at for how long, all of that. I very quickly had, you know, I was able to pull away from it. He was managing it and himself very well. Yeah. But I think a large part of that is football. Right, my son is obsessed with football. He lives for football. He plays football. He plays football for an academy. So it is huge in his world. It is huge in his life. It decides what he consumes online, which is very little because he's normally out playing football. If his phone's on, it's because he's filming himself training and he wants to better himself and upload it to his coach to show him what he's doing. Like, that's what he's using his phone for. Yeah. I'm there for that. We sit down and we've talked about things like the Tate brothers, for example. And I'm like, tell me about the Tate brothers. What do you think? He's like, "Mum, they're knobs." I'm like, okay, great. Okay. Yeah, you know, like he's not buying any of that, but I know there's lots of kids that do. So I can only speak through my own experience. I really think as I sit here now, I look back and I think sport's been a massive co-parent for me. the accountability, the responsibility that it brings, the part of being a team, being part of a community, male role modelling, like having great coaches that really push him, that he's super keen to please, has been massive. And I'm so glad for all the weekends that I've spent driving to the arse end of nowhere to find out that the match has been cancelled because the pitch is flooded. It doesn't matter. You know, my car every weekend is full of kids that I've come to know that have become community in our world. And, you know, if I could give advice to any mother of a young teen, it's just let them have passions and hobbies that don't involve a screen. Because it's been the saving of him. It really has. You know, I look at our screen reports. I use my phone for work, but like everybody, I use my phone far more than I should. His screen time is less than mine.
Yeah. So
I
feel like
way.
we hear so many different things, and there's so much scary stuff out there, you know, with the anxious generation that's been published recently and been talked about a lot. So it does make, for kids who are coming up to that stage where, like, I had a mobile phone when I was 13 because I was travelling into London, you know, like Ben, you know, when you're doing that, you do have to be able to have that communication. But it's now that things are sort of being questioned and put out there, you're like, oh, I thought you guys would have sussed all this out before we were there. You know,
I know. But you know what? In so many ways, G, I think it's like it's not the same but different. But here we so for example, like, as a teenager, I had eating disorders. I was very poorly with anorexia and bulimia, and I didn't have access to, you know, the internet, but I did have access to fashion magazines. I did have access to imagery that enabled me to have aspirations to look like something I could never be. And I had to learn how to manage that. And I didn't do that very well until I did. You know, I went horribly wrong with it before I got it right. You have to raise your children to be smart enough so that they can navigate this stuff, because it's not going away. I really wish a lot of it would. I think social media will look a lot different in even 5 years' time. I really do. I really do. And the way they use it. I do also think that in 20 years' time, we'll talk about smartphones in the same way that we talk about ultra-processed foods, in the same way that my generation talk about sitting in a house with no windows open while everybody smoked.
Yeah. I guess that's
Because
the thing,
it's
isn't it?
toxic.
There's always something. Like, I was talking before I came into the studio about the fact that, you know, when I was 13, I was definitely drinking, definitely going out to parties and drinking. I feel like nowadays that's not a thing.
No, it's not.
Know?
Certainly,
So
I mean,
there
maybe
is
because I've got a
always-
sporty kid. And there's definitely, you know, there's what they call the vodka and vape brigades. Yeah, so vaping's like the new cigarettes, I suppose. And just as harmful, I'm sure we'll discover in time. But I think that they have, they know far more about nutrition and mental well-being than we ever did. Right? It just wasn't taught at school. You know, there was no mental well-being whatsoever. It just wasn't even a conversation. Yeah. So in so many ways, they are better equipped to deal with the world, but in other ways, there's so much more for them to deal with. Our job as parents is to raise intelligent, well-rounded young men and women, young people who have a great sense of self and self-worth, because you got to like yourself to look after yourself. That's rule one, I think.
One of our kids has had a bit of a tricky time over the last couple of years, and I was trying to talk to him the other night, and he's always, when you talk feelings, he's always a bit like, meh. But the other night he went to me, "You're talking to me like we're in a movie." I was like, oh God. This pep talk isn't going well. I mean, he sees it. You know what I mean?
Yeah. But you see, like, because you and I have chatted off mic, so you know better than anybody, right? I only have one kid, so I only have one set of experiences. Every child's different. You know, your 3 children are born of you and Tom, but they couldn't be more different.
Yeah.
And how one will respond to the online world versus another will be inherently different. How you tool them up for that will be fundamentally the same, but different, if you know what I mean. It sounds like I'm talking in riddles and rhymes, but you know what I mean.
You talked about male role models. When your relationship ended, was that something that you really thought about sort of making, because obviously if you'd have still lived in Cheltenham and still had the family around you, you would have had different family male role models around you. And I think that's a different thing entirely, isn't it? That thing of when you're going after the career or moving away from the village, all of a sudden you're somewhere completely different and doing it alone without those male role models who would have been there.
Totally. Well, for a start, for about 7 years of Ben's young life, like when I say young life, like end of primary school, going into secondary school, I was in a long-term relationship with somebody who was and remains a fantastic role model for him. So that's great. My dad has been an incredible role model for him, and you try keeping that man away, let me tell you. You can put 300 miles of between us, he'll still make the journey. He's amazing, my dad, and has been such a steering hand in Ben's life. So even after the last England game, so obviously we're talking today ahead of the semi-finals tomorrow. Like the moment that England game finished with the quarterfinals, I literally hear Ben walk upstairs and go, "Hi, Gramps, I know, right? I mean, how amazing was Saka?" So he's got that. So,
I've never spoken to any of the other, single parents that have come on about those male role models. It's only because you brought it up when you said about the football and about how they've actually brought so many great male role models in. And I thought that's really interesting because I don't know whether that's something that you consciously thought of.
Not consciously, but I'm glad that, you find your people, right, along the way. And I think as well, this is interesting, right? So I had Catherine Ryan on my podcast recently, and we were talking about, I thanked her for putting a really positive narrative around single parenting. And I think it's really important that it doesn't become, like when I grew up, a single parent was something that was whispered about, it's like, it was just a given that it was a failing. There was no badge of honor. And that pisses me off because we're doing the job of two people. We're freaking warriors, right? We're amazing. If I went online now and I was a man, right, on a dating app, and I was a guy at my age, I'd raised my child on my own, I was the main provider, all of that stuff. My God, there'd be a queue. I'd probably have a reality show where somebody could win me. Do you know what I mean? Like,
You're so right.
Win
You're
him.
So right. Yeah.
Like, what a legend. What a hero. There are millions of me doing it. We are uncelebrated, unspoken about in that positive way. And some of my, like Hannah Waddingham, like you look at Hannah right now, Hannah's doing this, right? She inspires so many people, but for me, and listen, her talent is awesome. What she's achieving in her career is awesome. But let me tell you as her mate, how she's pulling it all together and making it work with her daughter remaining her North Star, her most important factor in every decision she makes. That's what makes Hannah Waddingham, to me, a superstar.
Yeah.
And there's a load of us out there. You don't need to be famous. And I just really wish that we could celebrate single parents, and they are predominantly female. It's predominantly single mothers, but not exclusively. I just wish we could be more reverential about them, actually. And I'm not just, listen, if you are in a family where, you're not together and the father is not the primary caregiver, that's not to lessen their contribution. But let's just sometimes just, a little round of applause for those that are doing the work too.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And also when you don't see those people that are being celebrated or it's not being talked about, that's a really hard place to be when that is your experience, that's your lived experience, and you feel cut out of certain situations.
It would just be really nice, and I think we'll get there, where people don't put their head to one side and go, "So you're a single parent?" Like, it comes with sympathy. It's like, no, so you're a single parent. High five. It's not what I wanted, but I tell you what, made it bloody work. He's an extraordinary young man, and I'm so proud of who he is. I don't take all the credit for it, but I'm I will take the lion's share of it, because, you know, you see what you see now at this age is what you've put in, right?
Yeah.
The way he is with his girlfriend, right? You can see the handprint that you've left on their heart and their head, and that's so important. It's like getting a return on your investment.
But also, you've gone through so much together. Like, you're a proper unit. You two.
But see, that sounds like we've been through so many difficult things together. Actually,
No,
we've been through
life.
No. I know. Yeah, in life, I totally understand where you're coming from with this. We have adventured through life together. We've had the most incredible time together. My happiest years on this earth have been as his mum, and I've had a really exciting life. You know, if all the taps turned off in terms of opportunity for me tomorrow, I couldn't complain. You know, I've eaten more than my fair share of great opportunities. But in amongst all of that, being his mum remains my greatest achievement.
I love that. Yeah. I also think that...
He'll vomit when he hears this, by the way.
Is there something brilliant about hearing, you know, as a single mum, hearing other people who have got to this stage, you know, got to this stage where they're about to go off, that not that hope, but that positive like positivity that comes with your experience. You know, for someone I always feel like there's one thing to be at the start of your journey and hear people sharing their positive experiences when it feels like it's so far away from where you are. Like, there's a journey to get to where you are. There's a journey of, you know, acceptance, of working out what it is actually that you have that is special, and you know, it's about the journey there, rather than it feels sometimes just so. Yeah, it's off in the distance, and it's an abstract thought that you all.
Do you know what, though? It's not that far. It literally, you know, where you are now with your 10-year-old, where I am, is in touching distance, G.
Yeah.
You know, you think 6 years ago, what were you doing?
God, I would have had a 4, 2, and a newborn. Yeah,
does it feel like 6 years ago?
No.
Right. So the next 6 years will go equally as quickly.
Yeah.
I wish I'd had a chance to listen to a conversation with somebody like me at the beginning of my journey.
Yeah.
And this isn't just about being a single parent. This is about being a parent, you know. But it's weird how life readies you for letting go. And you don't expect that you'll ever be okay with it, but you truly are. You're like, we're looking at unis next year. Like, my nest will be empty if he goes away.
Yeah.
And brilliant. I hope he has the time of his life, knowing that he can always come home. And that gave me the strength to be the girl that never heard no, because my mum and dad were always like, well, you know, go to London and try your best. And if it doesn't work out, you can always come home. So I always had a safety net. Yeah. Still have. I could still go home now if it all went tits up. And that's probably the greatest gift you can give any child.
Yeah, absolutely.
But always, I've still got on my key ring now. Bearing in mind, I've lived in London longer than I ever lived with my parents. I've still got their front door key on my key ring. Isn't that telling?
Also,
isn't that wonderful?
I think it takes you a long time to stop referencing where you grew up as home. I'm going home.
Yeah.
It's like, no, where you live now, that's your home.
Well, that's what's weird is, like, you know, I consider myself absolutely to be a Cheltonian, right? I'm from the Cotswolds. I'm from Cheltenham. That's my home. But my son, that's not his home.
Yeah.
He's a Londoner.
Yeah.
And actually, London is my home.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's weird. But
Kate, I feel really excited talking about you, about what is to come. Do you know what I mean? Like, sometimes when they get to this point, sometimes parents are dreading that sort of, we're told that we're going to dread the empty nest, that we're going to, you know, suddenly be lost. But it feels like there's so much excitement about actually what's to come. Like, who's he going to be? What's that step going to be like?
I think so much of it is about your state of mind, but also about who you've surrounded yourself with to this point, right? So me and the girls, we talk, and we have talked for years, about our fantasy existence beyond this stage of life, right? Which is, what does old age look like to us? I tell you what it looks like. It looks freaking fabulous, right? We're Jane Fonda. the next generation. We are all going to live in a shared property, like a commune. Let's call it a commune. You might call it an old people's home. We're going to go commune. It's called Picante della Casa. It's named after our favourite cocktail. There will be cocktails. There will be yoga. There will be fine dining. There will be all sorts of things going on there. I mean, literally, obviously, we're going to need a lot of money for this because basically we're just on a really massive, all-inclusive holiday. But fundamentally, I don't feel alone in this world. I feel like I've always got this band of sisters that have been there from the beginning. You know, I always say to them, we met when we had cheekbones and hip bones, and now we've got old bones. And aren't we lucky to have each other in old bones?
Oh, I mean, how old are you all going to be when you move into this commune?
Well, I'm ready to go. I mean, I can get the house on the market pretty quickly.
I mean, I think I want in, you know. I'm only a little bit behind. I'll move in when it's all set up, yeah.
We went to one place down in the Cotswolds not so long ago, and I could see the girls all going. We went away for a girls' night, and it's all these houses on sort of like, there's loads of lakes in the Cotswolds that people just don't know about, and you can live on the lakes, and it is like community living. It's like these, you know, when you go to Florida and Miami, like the Americans do it really, really well. Like, if you Google where Jane Fonda lives, you too would want to be old, right? You go there, but it's like they have these, I suppose it's like warden controlled, but really nice houses. And then there's on-site facilities like tennis, swimming, you know, PTs, right? It's an all-inclusive holiday. They all get around in golf buggies. You know, there's community. They have social events, so it's all within the community. So everybody is still stimulated on every level. They're active. You know, there's classes on site for, you know, if you want to further your education later in life, which sounds really exciting to me. I'd love to do a little bit of that. And then there's this little statistic that sits outside of all of it that makes me go, oh, hello. In America, they've recorded a record number of cases of STDs amongst the elderly community. I'm like, yeah, babe, I'm there for that. Not for the diseases, but, you know, I think we all know how to practice safe sex.
Chlamydia, it's okay.
And that was one of my first jobs in London, was working as a receptionist in a sexually transmitted disease clinic. So I've got all the info on, you know, like, I mean, listen, you don't want that. You don't want anything that looks like herpes. It never goes.
No. Is it always there?
Well, it kind of comes back. Yeah, it did. Unless, you know, I mean, listen, it was a long time ago since I answered the phones as hello, STD.
But at least you have all the knowledge to take with you.
So there you go. So, like, you know what, when you put it like take the STDs out of the equation, obviously, but when you think about what life could look like, yes, it could be lonely. I think loneliness is a great killer. I've never felt lonely in all the years that I've had big chunks of my life where I've been single, like for more than a year plus at a time, easily. I've never felt lonely because I've always felt loved. And, you know, it takes a village, right? And it's not about taking a village to raise a kid. It takes a village to get you through life. Curate your village. Choose your people wisely.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And I guess when it is on you, when you are the parent, you know, you really get the biggest say in who that village is, you know, who those people are that you're surrounding you and Ben with. Yeah.
Yeah. And we've done great. I only need to click into my photos on this laptop and I go, that's a life well lived. Lucky us.
Look, we both know lots of people that are in marriages that are the loneliest ever, you know, sort of, you know.
Yeah, and I don't want you to think I've been some sort of, you know, like, you know, singleton throughout the entirety of his life. I haven't. But I have for a large part of it, and that's okay too. You know, that's that. And they haven't not been happy times. In fact, they might have been some of my happiest.
If you could write a letter on motherhood, who would it be to and what would you say?
It's everything I've said to you in this hour. It's been my greatest achievement, my greatest privilege. It's the stuff that I lie awake at night thinking about that soothes me, is all of my time with him as his mum. You know, even now, just as I'm literally talking to you, I'm Rolodexing, you know. I remember all the car trips where he was strapped into his seat and we'd have music on and I was piping great music into his ears from a very young age. And watching just that, you know, and now the fact that he's, you know, completely, you know, literate in Stevie Wonder, I'm so proud of. All of that stuff. So I'm not making a very good job of this. I would say it's the greatest love affair you'll ever know. And like any love you'll ever know, it's the greatest honour, I think, to be able to guide somebody through life and love them unconditionally. And isn't that beautiful? It teaches you so much as well. I think that sometimes becoming a parent happens at a stage in your life when you almost need to relearn and reframe about what is important and what's not. Yeah. And it strips back, like watching a kid splash in a muddy puddle and getting a kick out of it. There's something in that for us as adults, you know. Put the phone down, look up, breathe, be present.
Absolutely.
Learn, you know, teach them how to grow a tomato plant and go out every day and look at it through their eyes as they go, look, a green tomato, a red tomato. We're eating the tomato. I don't even like tomatoes. There's a circle of life right there.
That's exactly what's going on in my garden.
What a shit letter I've just written. For a writer, that's abysmal.
No, I absolutely love it. And I also think that there's something in the fact that so often when we talk about, are you going to have kids, we focus so much on the baby aspect of it.
Totally.
We don't think of the beyond that, of the fact that they are children, they're teenagers, they're young adults, of the humans that you are creating.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think as well, you know, it's about preparing them for life as we know it. You know, in so many ways, I think I'm of that first generation of women who were university. Well, I didn't go to university, but there's a whole generation of us women that were suddenly the first, right? First to have really big careers, to be breadwinners, you know, the higher earners. And I think we've raised women, my generation have been raised to be able to do that. I'm not so sure that the boys were raised to deal with us. I think there's a lot of men that weren't ready for the likes of me. You know, like, what do you mean you earn more? What do you mean? Oh, so your work, so what, we're going to have to take that out of the diary because your work's as important as mine? Yeah, like that's societal, right? And so I hope that we are raising young people to be partners in this world, collaborators. And sometimes, you know, there's that cross-generation. I think I've been a little bit of a part of that. But I watch my son now with his girlfriend, and there is no like, I'm more important than you or I'm the man. It's like we are. And we're like, great, that's all I can do is raise my own to have that viewpoint that he and she are equally as important. My parents were like that, by the way.
Really?
Yeah, 100%. Like my dad did as much, if not more, housework around the house than my mum because she was working. He's like, well, I'm home. I'll do it while she's at work. They were a complete partnership. My dad cooked, he ironed, he cleaned, as did my mum, by the way. You know,
they were just jobs that had to be done around the house. That
they literally went, what needs doing? Right,
yeah.
Split it down the middle. How can we do this? So I was raised with that. So then suddenly when you come into the world and it's like, what do you mean? What do you mean like I'm not as important? Says who? I was livid at the idea of that. And I've never subscribed to it.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think, you know, we are raising young people to go out into a world that we hope to live in. You know, I would love for Ben's experience to not have any of the isms that we had to, you know, see and understand and obliterate.
Yeah, or at least be aware of them in a way that we weren't really when they were initially happening. Well, not initially happening. They're blooming centuries of it. But I think when experiencing it at a young age, you don't realise what that is, what you're being led by. Whereas I think this generation is so much more aware and they can call it out.
Yeah, totally. Even little things like, you know, when you're in a restaurant and they bring the bill, they give it to the man. Well, who says he's paying? You know, that's not fair on him either, by the way. Do you know what I mean? It's all that stuff. Just put it in the middle, mate. You know,
yeah,
let's just do that.
Kate, we end the podcast with you completing 3 sentences. The first one is being a mum means
everything.
Since having a child, I...
Have never been happier.
And I'm happy when...
Last night I sat and watched Gogglebox with my son, and we laughed and laughed and laughed. And it was about as happy as I could ever hope to be. It was so simple.
Kate, thank you so much.
Pleasure.